What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Universal Mastery. Welcome back to my public YouTube channel. Glad to have you here. What exactly am I going to be speaking about in today's video? I'm going to specifically be speaking about a very important subject that was something that I wish I applied more during the earlier stages of my deeper occult initiation. I'm going to be speaking about the importance of having a guide or having even a mentor during your spiritual self-development or during your initiatory occult journey. This is something, once again, that I think a lot of people are neglecting. I definitely did myself. I wish I didn't as much. I'll go into a little bit of an explanation of, how this sort of unfolded in my life. But overall, this is what I'm talking about. If you want to know if it's actually important to have someone that acts as a spiritual guide for you, or if you have a mentor during your initiatory self-development process, this is definitely a video that's for you. So what I recommend is that you simply stay tuned. All right, so let me first start with introducing myself, just in case you don't know who I am. My name is Jeremiah Schwartz. I am a professional occultist. I am fully initiated in the entirety of the Kabbalistic tree. I'm studied when it comes to the 22 major arcana of the tarot deck. I'm studied when it comes to planetary energies in association with astrology. And I'm also very aware of trauma. So with that being said, let's go right into it. So we're talking about, is it actually necessary to have a spiritual guide or a mentor with you during your initiatory process or during your spiritual self-development? Now, this is the answer to the question. Yes, it is always going to be important, and it is always going to be beneficial to have someone that can act as a guide for you, or to literally hire someone that is a professional in the field, that has knowledge, has education, and most importantly, has experience to act as a mentor for yourself. This is the reality of the situation. Most people that get into their self-development, most people that get into their spiritual self-development, or people that are into the occult field and are starting to get into Kabbalistic initiation, most people are not aware of actually how important it is to have guides. Let me explain why this is. A lot of the times, and I fell into this myself, a lot of the times we think, okay, well, as long as I have an ability to communicate with the universe or an ability to communicate with other types of spirits and entities, let's say through the act of invocation, then why would I need a mentor or why would I need a guide in my life when I'm connecting with these divine forces, whether that's telepathically, whether that's intuitively, I don't know. So some people don't think it's necessary to have a mentor or to have a real life guide because they have their direct connection to the divine. And I understand that, and that was the place that I came from. Now, there are other people that are like, I don't think I need a mentor, I don't think I need a guide, just because I feel like I don't need one. I think I can just navigate this on my own. Now, here's the reality. No matter what, and I want this to be very clear, no matter what, other human beings that have knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and experience are always going to be superiorly significant on your own personal self-development journey or throughout your initiatory process. You are not going to be able to do the deepest level shadow work or do the deepest level work with becoming aware of deep repressed emotions within the body, within the nervous system. You're not going to be able to do the deepest level work without another human being who has experience. It's a part of what it means to be a human. Like, we have to interact with other humans in order to establish that type of energetic connection to reflect back to ourselves. So in other words, other people are able to point out areas of your own shadow within you that you will never be able to see and you will never be able to find on your own. I want you to really ingrain this into your awareness, because this is a real deal truth here. Even if you have a super solid connection with other entities or other spirits, and you have an ability to telepathically communicate with them almost as if they are present with you now, which is an ability that I have, even if that's in place, you can only go so far because you're not connecting with another physical human being. There's something about another physical human, another physical being, just like you are, having an energetic connection together. So the soul and the spirit in both of these individuals is connecting through the physical body, where somehow there is information that you're able to absorb that is unavailable if you didn't have that type of human-on-human connection. And even if you're doing the deeper work and you're a little bit closed off to thinking that it's important to have real relationships in your life to help you better learn about yourself or help you develop, what you will actually end up finding out is that these entities themselves, if you're someone that's into the occult and you know how to do practices where you're communicating with other forces like spirits and entities and you name it, they will bring other humans in your life that are carrying the energy of what it is that you're trying to communicate with. So entities come through the form of other human beings so that you can develop the way that you need to while you were calling on that force in the first place. So you can get far developing awareness of yourself, working with spirits in, let's say, a ritualistic setting where it's just you and the entity, you and the spirit itself. But then there's another layer of awareness that you have to eventually cultivate if you're really going down this path to essentially reach your highest potential, where you have to connect with other human beings. And oftentimes, as I said with this occult field, the entities you're working with ritualistically will take on human forms. Their energies will move into other humans that then come into your path and then relay certain types of information or knowledge to you. And sometimes that information, that knowledge isn't just verbal, it's actually energetic. It's just the person shows up and just you being with them or having a conversation with them. Not about what's being said, but just being there is the energetic transfer that needs to happen. So this is actually one of the biggest reasons why when it comes to therapy, why therapy can be so valuable and it can be so powerful. And the reason why is because a therapist, a trained therapist, is trained to be able to reflect you to yourself. So if any of you have ever done therapy before and you've worked with a skilled professional, you're going to see that they have an energy where they listen to understand. They don't try to interject without the time being appropriate. You can definitely tell they're more receptive. They're listening to what you're saying. But most importantly, they create a healthy space for you, and they create a healthy environment for you to feel like you can conversate what you need to them. And it's not that the value you're actually getting from your therapist is the information that the therapist is telling you about, like, hey, this is what you should focus on, or hey, this is what I'm noticing about you. That is valuable, but that's not where the real value is. The real value is when you're communicating in that safe space, as the therapist is holding that safe space, you're actually, as you're communicating, you're starting to see yourself from an observer perspective, and you're starting to notice what you're actually sounding like when you're communicating. So this is really nuanced and it's kind of deep to understand. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. Some of you might not. Obviously, you would have to have gone to a therapist to kind of understand what's happening here. But the therapist is creating a safe space while also being very receptive and truly listening to understand, which then allows the client or the person to communicate things that are deep inside of them that normally they wouldn't communicate in everyday life because they feel comfortable to. And as they're communicating what they need to say from this deep space within, they're actually able to almost observe what it is that they're saying about themselves. Like the awareness is almost leaving the body and it's observing the self communicating to the therapist while you're aware of like, wow, I can't believe I just said that. Or I sound like I am sad as I'm saying this, and I didn't know that I was actually sad when I was saying this, or when I was saying this in my mind. So the reason why I'm sharing this is because this is showing the power of human-on-human connection. Now, I'm not sitting here and I'm not saying that everyone needs a therapist. Okay, there's many different types of works, many different types of spiritual works, self-development works that you could get yourself involved with. I'm just using therapy as an example because I thought that that would be a good example to show how important it is to have a human-on-human connection, because other humans have this ability to reflect what you're going through the person. And this type of reflection doesn't happen as efficiently if you're not connecting with other humans. So this is something that has to happen from human-on-human connection. It has something to do with our biological makeup, has something to do with our physiology, has something to do with the way our minds are structured, the way our nervous systems operate, and how we truly transfer information across one another. So this is different from when let's say you're in the occult and you're just doing invocations and you're trying to get all of your growth by just doing ritualistic practices. Okay? You're going to be missing out on that human nervous system, biology, mind, physiology aspect. And that becomes very important. And as I said, the deepest levels of spiritual work actually show you how important that human-on-human connection is, because the energies move through other humans and then they come into your life. So with these examples that I'm creating, once again, I'm just harping on the reality of how important it is to have another person, physical person, either as a guide in your life that is experienced and that has wisdom and understanding, or someone that you're actually paying for as a mentor. Someone that you're actually paying for to get that wisdom, understanding, and experience from them. So in my personal journey, for a long time, I didn't really understand how important it was to have a human-on-human experience with other people, because I was developing such a strong connection with these other invisible forces, but to me, they felt very real, and I was going through a lot of transformation with them. I was triggering and surfacing a lot of growth that I've previously never done in my life before. And that, to me, was something that was it was very eye-opening. I was like, I don't need to, connect with other people. I have this cheat code that I can always tap into. And it just kind of gave me, an invisible pass to say, you know what? I don't really need human connection. I've got me. I've got these entities. I have this cheat code. I can always resort to this. And yes, as I said, I've gained a lot of value from that. And it definitely plays its role. But like all things, there needs to be a moderation. There needs to be a balance. So throughout my initiatory journey specifically, I attracted multiple guides in my life. So the way that I actually look at this is these were like mentor figures that some of them I had to pay for. And then others, they kind of naturally just came into my path. And I started to notice the significance of these types of people when they showed up. I started to recognize, wow, this is someone that I'm learning a lot from, and I need to really absorb this information. I don't want to let go of this in the sense of I don't want to let this pass by me, or I don't want to ruin this because my ego thinks that I don't need that. So I did open myself up a lot to certain people that did show up in my life that played a guiding type of role or operated as mentors. So once again, some of them I had to pay for, and then others I naturally attracted. And I've had many mentors in my life that gave me different abilities, different perspectives, different awareness, different understandings, helped me integrate more of my true self. And as I said, like, when I started noticing how important these people were, I started allowing myself to be much more receptive to them when they showed up. And I used to like to see myself as like this person that had a lot of knowledge, and, because I'm into the occult and I know how to communicate with entities, I have information that most people don't have access to. So that, I kind of used to be in that space of mind. So in a way, when I would conversate with other people, I used to be kind of hold an energy of like, I know a lot more than you. You don't even understand, what I know. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have a lot of knowledge. I definitely do have a lot of knowledge. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge most people don't have. But that doesn't account for the fact that, that can be taken out of proportion, which in my past it definitely was. So I surrendered that a little bit more. And once again, I started recognizing that these people that were showing up in my life, I wasn't necessarily the mentor for them. They were the mentor for me. And yes, I did play a significant role in these people's lives. I helped them grow and helped them evolve. But for my personal growth, looking back, I can clearly see how important these people were for my development, for what I needed to become aware of and what I needed to know, and just what I needed to observe in that person to then be successful in my later initiations or be successful in my later growth processes. So these people became extremely significant in my life whenever they would show up, and they would always show up as like a Hierophant-like figure. So what this means is that when these mentors showed up in my life, or when these teachers, they were always significant. I knew that they were. There was no doubt about it in my mind. Like, there was no question. Like, when they were there, it was like, I know that this person's here to teach me something, so I'm going to allow myself to be receptive and be a student to what they have to share. And I absorb all that information, when it happens. So I became much more receptive to that, and I started seeing the reality that it's actually, I can seek that. I don't just have to let it necessarily come to me when it's there, but I can actually seek it. So in other words, I can actively invest in mentors or guides, spiritual guides in my life that can play a significant role in my self-development. And yes, it may cost me money, but with the value that I'm getting from this spiritual self-development standpoint, from being around this other person and really absorbing their wisdom, their knowledge, and their experience, it's priceless. And it took me a long time to realize how important it was to actually invest into other teachers or into other spiritual guides that could play that role in my life. Where I am currently, I am invested in multiple different types of people that offer spiritual significance in my life. And it has played a massive role in how I'm developing myself in this present moment. And it's, I've invested myself into spiritual teachers that are able to challenge me. So I spend a lot of time in my personal life as a teacher. I have a lot of students. I have a lot of clients. So I find myself in a teacher role a lot of the times. And just in general, I have a strong teacher type of vibe to me because I've been through a lot of experiences at a young age. So I have a lot of wisdom that I can share just in general. So most types of interactions or conversations I find myself in, I usually do find myself naturally kind of falling into the role of being the teacher. So I've come to realize how important it is to find and then invest in people in my life that can be the teacher for me and call me out on things within myself that I'm currently not aware of. And, connect myself with people that are not afraid to do these things. And these are the types of people that I currently have in my arsenal of guides and mentors that I pay for and that I currently work with. And all of them are super powerful individuals that literally play the teacher role for me. And they know I have a lot of wisdom. They know I have a lot of value to offer them, but because I'm paying for their services, they hold a strong role of being the teacher. So they stay as that teacher and pretty much allow me to be the students. And that is, once again, because I am paying for these guides. I am paying for these mentors. And ultimately, I'm paying for my self-development. I'm investing into myself with the money that I'm making. And there is no other better place to invest your money than into your own self-development, your own self-evolutionary growth. That money will never, ever, ever be wasted. So, once again, it is so valuable to have these guides because they play significant roles in giving you the awareness that you need to get to this next steps of the growth process that you're going to be moving into. And it becomes so divinely structured. So it's like you could have a teacher or a guide or a mentor that tells you something where at the time they tell you it, you don't even think it's that important. And then you give it 2 weeks and then boom, exactly what you talked about with your mentor is exactly what you're going through. And you have an opportunity to be that much more aware of what's taking place and apply the principles that are needed to be applied in that moment. So with that being said, this is me sharing the example of how important having a mentor is from my experience. Now, let me give you a little bit of a perspective of how I've seen how important it is for the role of me being a mentor in other people's lives. So for my students or for my clients. So there are many people that I work with currently and that I have worked with that are getting themselves into the occult. And what this means is they're starting to invoke spirits. They're starting to invoke entities. They're starting to initiate themselves into Kabbalistic initiatory practices like the Tree of Life, like the Sephiroth, or like the Qliphoth. And let's just say, even if they're not getting into the occult, because I do work with many clients that are not even practicing the occult. They're interested in it. They like to talk about it. They like to talk about spirituality, but they're not in it like that. They're not actually practitioners. And a lot of these people, just in general, are working on their self-development. Something deep inside them recognizes they're not necessarily ready to jump into invocation or jump into Kabbalistic initiations yet. So with these people, they're just working on their self-development. And that's a beautiful place to be. So once again, working with these different types of clients, I see a lot of them are in a space where they're trying to understand how to develop a foundation for themselves to then be able to get into the deeper practices so that when they get into the deeper practices, they don't end up traumatizing themselves even more or hurting themselves getting into these deeper practices. This is like the common theme that I'm seeing for the calls that I do, for the mentorships that I do, and just the people that I work with in general. Most people are kind of lost when it comes to understanding how to create their own foundation to have safety that they can always fall back on for when they start getting into the deeper practices or the deeper self-development where a lot of repressed negative emotions come out of the body, start to come out of the nervous system up to the forefront, and then ultimately need to be processed. So really, most people are seeking my guidance to help them set this foundation in place so that when they start doing invocations or when they start initiating through the Kabbalistic tree or when they start doing the deeper levels of self-development, they can be prepared for what starts to come up from the body so that they can actually process it and heal or integrate, rather than having all this negative stuff come up to the surface and then lead them down a path where they actually traumatize themselves even more, or potentially self-sabotage and hurt themselves even more. So there are so many people that I am working with that have never heard of developing this underlying foundation the way that I teach other people. Let me even say this. There are many people that I even work with that didn't even teach me how to develop this underlying foundation. This is something that I had to sort of learn on my own. I learned it from bits and pieces of my other teachers, but I also had to seek my own education and seek my own knowledge on how to develop an underlying security net, an underlying safety net, which is a foundation for the deeper level work that I even get myself into. So in other words, what I'm saying is I don't know a lot of people that know the necessity of having a safety net and having a proper foundation before getting into deeper self-development and deeper spiritual practices. So this is why we hear so much craziness within the occult field. This is why there is a lot of craziness within self-development itself in general. This is why there's a lot of people that can get into it. They can spend so much time, money, and energy doing these practices, and seemingly they get nowhere. Or on the occult spectrum, sometimes they go crazy. Sometimes they actually start to lose touch of reality and start to really go down a dark path that can be very hard to crawl back from. And I've seen it happen so many times to close people in my life, unfortunately. So there is a mass collective lack right now, because spirituality and self-development, I like to bring these together because they really are the same thing. It's just two different words, really. There is a lack of awareness within the spiritual community, and there's a lack of this teaching behind it, and there's a lack of this education that's behind it. And that's because we're in the early stages right now of self-development and spirituality, or what is occult, is starting to no longer be occult. So what was hidden is starting to be seen. What was spiritual and taboo and very mystical and esoteric is starting to become a lot more real in people's lives. As the society we live in gets a little bit more traumatizing, people are starting to resort to higher principles and higher truths to make sense out of what's happening. So as more people are getting into self-development, more people are getting into spirituality, there is this funneling of people like, give me the practices I need to save myself. Give me the practices I need to feel better. Give me the practices I need to free myself from this matrix that I've been stuck in. Okay? Teach me how to break these cycles. Teach me how to break these chains. And then you have all these teachers that come out and they give you these practices like extreme breath work, visualizations, certain types of meditations. We could even go as far as saying deeper work, like somatic work, which is like tuning into the body and really pulling out some of these deep repressed emotions. And you name it. So there's all different types of these practices, and every one of these practices are very valuable, and they're actually very powerful, and they can be very significant in someone's self-development. But the problem is that most people don't have the right education, and they don't have an underlying safety net. They don't have a foundation to lean on in order to process what comes up from these different modalities and from these practices. So it really takes someone to have gone through a lot of significant, challenging life experience and have done a lot of study and education to know how important these underlying mechanisms are before even moving forward. Because how are we going to build a building if we don't have the right foundation in place? Without the right foundation, the building's going to collapse whenever there's a storm. The storm would be the emotional upbringing or the emotional upheaval, and then not having that proper foundation would be the storm destroying the building. So if we can create this foundation, which is a safety net underneath, and educate the person on what's taking place and why we have this safety net, then they're going to be set up for so much more success than the person who doesn't have that education and who does not have that foundation. And this can be the power of working with a mentor or working with a spiritual guide that can help you understand these mechanisms. Sometimes when you're intuitively working with a spiritual guide that just comes in your life, they can actually teach you little bits and pieces to this puzzle without actually even knowing what it is that they're fully teaching you. So these things can be taught to another person very intuitively, and they don't even understand what's taking place. When you work with a real professional like myself, who's been through a lot of this life experience and has gained a lot of understanding, wisdom, and knowledge from my own experience, I can actually structure this building of this healthy foundation for you and then educate you intentionally on what you need to know as you progress or as you move forward so that you can be better prepared for what's going to happen when you pursue your initiatory journey or when you pursue deeper self-development. And this is a universal process. This really does happen to everyone. There's no one that can escape the deeper self-development process if you're going into the deeper self-development. Okay, you can stay on that surface level and not fully pull everything out, but you'll stay on the surface level and you'll kind of stay in that space. And no one wants to stay there, for a long time because you don't feel that great. But when you really want to make that significant progress and break a lot of these reoccurring cycles of negative beliefs and negative habits that you get stuck in, it requires a lot of deeper work to be done, which needs that safety net, that foundation in place to prepare yourself for that storm that comes from it. So, in other words, as I'm saying, this is why having mentors or spiritual guides becomes so important, because these are people that are divinely placed along your path to give you massive pieces of the puzzle that you may be needing to further align with your true self and step into your power. If you're watching this right now, you're here for a reason. Clearly, I am one of these divinely placed guides for you as the listener. And on that note, if you want to take advantage of working with me personally, then you can book a mentorship in the second link below. Okay? In this mentorship, I can work with you to identify some of the deeper repressed emotions that you're dealing with so that you can be aware of what that emotion is or what those emotions are. And then potentially we could even go back to some of the roots of where it came from, potentially. But more importantly, we can start working on a foundation so that you can have a safety net and you can have practices in place to allow you to start processing that emotion without getting too overwhelmed and then resorting to negative coping habits or without resorting to drug abuse, your toxic relationships, food addiction, whatever it is. We can put these pieces together in a healthy way, in a structured way, because I know this process. I've done it in my own life. I've done it for other people. And then I can educate you on what you need to do to start bringing these emotions up and allow yourself to start processing them in a healthy way. So if this is something you want to take advantage of, it can be extremely important. That's why I'm bringing it up in this video. Second link below, you can check out my mentorship options if you want to get a better understanding of what it is on a phone call with me, or if you simply want to just ask me questions about things that you might be interested in. Then also in that second link below, there's a one-on-one call option. But I would definitely, for the sake of this video, recommend booking a mentorship with me. Specifically, I would recommend the 3-month mentorship because that's going to be the deepest mentorship that you could take advantage of. All right. But as I was saying, this is how important it is. And you will see mentors and you will see guides along your spiritual path. If you don't have them in your life right now, then something needs to shift. if you don't have any spiritual guides or paid mentors that you're working with, you need to start shifting your perspective to be more open to someone showing you things about yourself that you may not know. The reason why you may not have spiritual guides or mentors in your life right now is because you're closing that off. You're closing off that ability to be open to the unknown, and you may be thinking you have a lot more knowledge and power than what you actually have. So I encourage you to keep an open mind, and if you really want power, and if you really want to know your true self, it would be so important for you to recognize that the only way you're going to get there is by opening up to other souls, other actual human beings that can reflect to you the deeper portions of your unconscious that you can't see on your own. And when you find the right mentor or when you have the right spiritual guides that are in your life, your growth process starts taking off like this. Because you are working with someone just like what I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm working with you. I'm doing this over the public YouTube channel, my channel specifically, and I'm giving you all this information. I'm giving you all this value, and I'm working with you. And you as a listener right now are receptive to what I'm talking about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have made it this far. And this is shifting your life, and this is causing significant changes to start happening in your life as well. Imagine if you were able to talk to me live. Imagine if you were able to ask me questions, or if I was able to see you. Because right now, I can't necessarily see you. I'm speaking to an audience right now. But if I was looking at you, observing you, energetically connecting with you, and then able to give my perspective on where you are specifically, that's a whole nother level of self-development. And this is what your mentors and this is what your guides can do with you. They can energetically tune into you, recognize where you are, observe within themselves based on the experience you're in, pull from their own wisdom, knowledge, and experience, and then give you advice because they've already been through what it is that you're going through. That's another piece of this puzzle. When you have mentors and when you have spiritual guides in your life, let me say this, they shift within time. There's not just a one single mentor or a one single spiritual guide that stays with you for the rest of your life. Now, I'm not saying that that can't happen, but most of the times, your guides and your mentors can shift as you evolve as well. But the most important thing to understand is that when you're working with these people, they already have experience with what you haven't yet experienced. So they're giving you the wisdom from their own bank of life experience. So it's not coming from a space of, yeah, I read it in this book, so now I'm relaying it back to you, and this is what we should do. It's like, I've been there before. I know what you're going through because I went through it myself. I felt the same emotions in this situation. This is how I came out of it, or this is how I processed this challenging experience. This is what I would do in your situation, or this is what I would start paying more attention to so that you can start processing this challenging situation that you might be in. This is another one of the most significant benefits that you get when working with other people or allowing yourself to work with a spiritual guide during that process, especially when it comes to Clipothic initiation. So for any of you that are getting yourself into Clipothic initiation or already find yourself in Clipothic initiation, first of all, I already know how challenging it is. Why? Because I've initiated through it myself. I know how challenging it is. I know how scary it can be. I know it is a deep, intimate process of working with some significant unhealed past trauma. And that is not something light. That is not something that should go right over someone's head. So I know that when you go through these different spheres of initiation and you start dealing with these different archetypal experiences in your real life, I know that they are preparing you to get to the point where you eventually go to cross the abyss. And I know how important it is to integrate some of these experiences leading up to that crossing of the abyss, because I have seen over and over and over again in many people, when it came to that point, everything went downhill. everything started crashing in their life because they weren't properly processing the earlier spheres and going through the archetypal experiences and integrating them. In other words, they didn't have the right foundation. They didn't have the right safety net underneath of everything. They didn't have the proper education to know the importance of processing the emotions, or at least having education on what do we need to do if we don't even know how to feel our emotions. Because there's many people that have been so hurt, traumatized, they don't even know how to feel. And they don't have the right education to know that if you have all these unhealthy coping mechanisms in place, that the first thing we need to do is start removing those things and replacing them with healthy coping mechanisms. Otherwise, when you get to the crossing of the abyss and the floodgates open of your deep unconscious and everything starts coming out, all that repressed negative energy starts coming through the nervous system, ready to be purged or ready to be felt. The first thing people resort to, if they didn't have the right foundation, is the unhealthy coping mechanisms. The drug addiction, the sex addiction, the food addiction, the toxic relationship addiction. And these unhealthy coping mechanisms will harm your nervous system. They will hold you in an unsafe environment so that you actually cannot process those negative energies that are coming up. And if you combine that with crossing the abyss, you have a perfect formula for someone to really go into a dark space in their consciousness. Why do I know this? I've dealt with many people who have been through this experience, close friends of mine that have failed this process or have not integrated it properly and have started to lose their shit. Now, I'm not only speaking from people that I've worked with. In my own life, I've experienced this where when I went across the abyss, I didn't have this level of education. I didn't have this strong awareness of how important my teachers were or how important it was to have a mentor in my life. I wasn't really actively seeking people that had knowledge or wisdom that could have very much helped me, but I was a little bit too ego-driven, thinking that I had the knowledge within myself and that I didn't need anybody. So I told you, from the beginning of this video, I had to learn this within time. Now, thankfully, I've always been a studier. I've always educated myself. So I found a way within myself, because of my strong willpower, my strong intention, to go through this experience and not get too harmed by it. So in other words, when it came to my crossing of the abyss, I was still attached. I had a strong attachment and I was not integrating the previous spheres as best as I could have. But I was burning myself out a lot, and I was fighting to maintain this identity of a version of myself that was not nearly who I am. It was a very artificial version of myself. And I remember getting to that crossing of the abyss experience, I was faced with a decision. I internally and viscerally felt this. I was faced with a decision to either let go of this identity and then be able to start entering into the abyss to start crossing it, or I could hold on to the identity and start literally losing my mind. And this was the first time in my life when I was faced, first of all, with a decision like this, but I felt these thoughts in my mind that started telling me things that I've never heard them say before. It was the weirdest thing. It was almost like I was starting to experience psychosis. And it was scary. And for anyone that's ever experienced psychosis, you know how uncomfortable it is. And the reason why it's there is because there's a lot of repressing that you're doing, or there's a lot of coping that you're doing in an unhealthy way. So I experienced this personally, and I knew I was holding on, though. I knew I had this attachment, and this attachment also came with unhealthy coping mechanisms like drug abuse. At the time, for me, this was kratom. So I had to recognize, first of all, I have to pull back on this kratom use, pull back on that. I didn't go cold turkey at this time, but I pulled back big time. And then I had to let go of this attachment, this mental attachment of this version of myself that I thought I was, or I thought I was becoming. I had to let go of that and surrender completely to the unknown and just allow myself to be what I am in the present moment. And that scared me because to me at that time, that didn't feel as powerful as what I thought I could be. But that was just a story that I created for myself that was not true. So I surrendered. And when I did surrender, I let go and then I pulled back on my unhealthy coping mechanism. The thoughts, the weird psychosis that was in my consciousness started to suddenly disappear. And it went away. And then I allowed myself to start transitioning into this new unknown space where it was like, for the first time, I was starting to regulate my nervous system. I was, for the first time, starting to actually get in touch with my body and feel the actual sensations of what it means to be in the present moment and what it means to feel. And what are my feelings? Like, for the first time, I'm like actually here with my true feelings, which originally was a lot of just negative energy. It was truly a lot of like kind of depression and sadness and fear. And at the time, I didn't fully understand that. I just knew I felt kind of like, I guess the word is negative. And I didn't try to run away from it or create an identity that ran away from it, but rather I allowed myself to kind of feel it and kind of observe it and allow it. And this is what started that regulation process for me. So, I say all that to just show the significance of this initiatory journey, especially when it comes to crossing the abyss. If you do not have the right foundation and you don't have the right education getting into this form of self-development, occult initiation, there is a high likelihood, and I'm not saying this to scare you. I truly am not. Look, I encourage you to walk down this path as best as you think you can. Look, if you could do it completely on your own and I didn't see many people going down this path and I didn't see people failing, I wouldn't be saying this. So I encourage you to listen to your intuition. If your intuition tells you that you think I'm wrong, then follow that. But if your intuition is resonating with what I'm saying and you kind of feel it viscerally, like there's a lot of people that get into this self-development without that proper foundation and then it ends up further hurting them or further traumatizing them, then I would listen to what I'm saying and consider it. But once again, it is not a joke, and I do not say this lightly, and that's why it's so important to have guides through this process, why it's so important to seek mentors. That's why I offer the service of the mentorship. I love doing the mentorships. It's something that I actually value. It's something that I love doing. But part of the reason also why I love doing it is because I see how much value it actually offers to my students or to my clients at the same time. It really is an important, dynamic there. So I want to make that clear so that, as you're listening, the value that you can really take away from this is that, you know what, I'm going to open myself up more and I'm not going to think that I know everything. And I'm not going to pretend like, oh, because I'm into the occult or because I have these beliefs that I have access to knowledge that other people can't give me, or I don't need other people because I have access to secret knowledge. When in reality, the occult is everything, right? It's that spiritual layer of reality. And that spiritual layer of reality overlays everything, including other humans. And you will have to deal with other humans in order to better know yourself. That's how you regulate your nervous system. It's how you get in tune with your body. And I know that this can sound very uncomfortable for some of you who have really blocked yourself off from other humans. I know why you would have done that. I know you've been through pain. I know you've been hurt before in your past to the point where you probably have a really hard time trusting other people. You're not closed off to other people for no reason. So we have to get to those roots, create a healthy foundation, allow ourselves to start processing these things with the right practices, and then educate as to why it's important to have these human interactions and what can start coming up when we're doing this work so that we know how to process it and we know what to expect when these things happen. All right? So be more open, be receptive. Allow yourself to invite the guides in your life. Allow yourself to find the right mentors. I encourage any of you that are feeling it viscerally to book a mentorship with me. All right? we'll leave it there. If this video offered you value, definitely come down here and hit the thumbs up button. Let me know it offered you value by hitting that thumbs up button. Now also drop down in the comment section and let me know how exactly this spoke to you. Let me know what you learned from this content. Let me know who your spiritual teachers are. Let me know if you have any mentors in your life that you're actually investing in. I would love to know. Are you actually using your money and saving up and investing in other people that help you better know your true self? Let me know all of that in the comment section. I'd love to read over that. Now also hit the notification bell. Make sure you're getting notified whenever I'm posting this content. You clearly do not want to be missing out. Come down here and hit the subscribe button. By subscribing, you are further linking into my content. There really is an energetic component that goes behind that. So if you want to further link into what it is that I'm teaching, then I would highly recommend subscribing. Okay? If not, forget about it. Now, I want to say this. If you would like to join within my private Facebook community, which has almost 1,000 members at this point, you can definitely do so. If you go into the YouTube description, you click that drop down, you scroll down, you're going to see a link that says private Facebook community. You click that link, then you can request to join, and one of my Facebook moderators will gladly invite you in. All right? There's tons of members in this group that are posting on a consistent basis. There has been tons of wonderful relationships that have actually been formed from this private Facebook community where people are actually meeting up in real life and getting into occult practices together in real life. And I find that so awesome. So if this is something that you want to get yourself into, check it out. It's the private Facebook community. Now, I'm going to take your awareness to one of the most important links in the YouTube description. This is the Patreon. This is the first link at the very top. You cannot miss it. On the Patreon, I have an entire grouping of exclusive videos that are not on my public YouTube channel. The content is more advanced and more personal than what you're getting on my public YouTube channel. So in other words, if you're getting value from what I teach here, definitely join the Patreon. All right. Specifically, tier number 2 gives you access to a magic training course, which I feel like would be valuable if you're a beginner occultist and you're looking for a structure to follow to develop your practices. Tier number 3 is the most popular tier of the Patreon itself. That speaks for itself. This is what's called the Universe.B Vampire Service. So this is a service that's performed on the 29th of every single month, and this is the only ritualistic service that I offer publicly. This service is designed to completely change your energetic structure to be more Universe.B dominant. So in other words, it changes the energetic spin to your energy field. Most people have a spin that goes clockwise. This changes it to go counterclockwise. So what that starts to do is that starts to take the awareness and pull it in more so that there's a lot more potential to develop self-love, okay? Love of the self. So the awareness, rather than pointing outwards, is now pointing inwards. And this also comes with the ability to be much more receptive to your unconscious and your subconscious mind. So overall, this is a very feminine type of alchemical transformation, which does set an amazing foundation for the practitioner who is a participant of this service. When you're more receptive to your deep unconscious and subconscious, that naturally means you're able to start processing emotions that have been repressed in your nervous system because you're not running away from them anymore. You're not pushing against them. You're receptive to them. This also gives these individuals an ability to start viewing dark energy and chaos in the environment no longer from a lens of being wrong, bad, or evil, but now starting to see it as potential and power. That is alchemical in nature, and this awareness can shift a lot of things for you. As you pull in that dark energy and that chaos, it really does turn into your potential and your power. Okay? All from getting this simple Universe.B Vampire Service. But you have to be receptive to the service. You can't get into it thinking that, oh, this service is going to completely change my life. I don't have to do anything. I can continue living my life being addicted, doing things that I know aren't healthy for me and all this other stuff. You have to be the person that's using this service with an intention of actually developing yourself, doing that deep inner work, and having a willingness to make those sacrifices that need to be made in order to do that deeper work itself. In combination with that type of intention with this service, I have seen hundreds of people's lives completely shift after having received this service. hundreds of lives. And there have been over 1,000 people that have received this service. And there are currently around 200 members on the Patreon, which are using this vampire service. So if this is something that intrigues you, definitely check it out. That would be tier number 3 in the Patreon first link. All right. Now, tier number 4 of the Patreon is the top tier. This gives you access to everything from the previous tiers, but you also get some additional content as well. You get a psychic prediction reading at the beginning of every month, anywhere from the 1st to the 10th, where I use my tarot card deck and my oracle card deck to give you the energetic experiences of what you're going to be expecting moving into this month. Now, you also have an ability to message me whenever you want through WhatsApp, and I will literally respond to you through voice message. Whenever I have the time to, I will respond to you. So you have me on call, okay? That would be for the top tier of the Patreon. If that's something you're interested in, first link in the YouTube description. We'll leave it there. Now, we're gonna move on into the second link of the YouTube description. You can't miss it. Go down to that description, click that second link below. This is gonna be super important, especially with what we talked about in this video. This is where you can book a mentorship with me. I have a 6-week mentorship and I have a 3-month mentorship. These mentorships are going to be extremely life transforming. They are not going to be surface level mentorships. These are going to be some real deal conversations. These are going to be some real deal intimate connections that me and you will be establishing with each other. And I will be giving everything that I can to help you better know your true self. And I've already done, I've done over 10 of these mentorships. This is a new service that I offer. I've done over 10 of them, and I have multiples of them that are ongoing right now. I recently just raised the prices of the mentorship, and in the near future, as we move into 2024, I'm going to raise the prices again. Okay, so getting in while you can, while the prices are low, is going to be your best option. So with that being said, that is all within that second link below. Definitely look into it if you're interested. Now also, if you want to get a taste of what this work can be like and some of the stuff that we want to draw our attention to, then definitely consider booking a one-on-one call with me where you can just get face-to-face with me and potentially ask me questions that you might have. And then we can kind of go into what the mentorships would look like if that's something that you wanted to get into. Once again, it can be completely, the one-on-one call could be whatever you want to talk about, okay? So that's all in that second link below. We'll leave it there. Now, within that same second link below, you have an option to book a tarot card reading with me. This is a tarot card reading that I promise you have never received before. The reason why is because I understand the Kabbalistic tree way more than the average person does. And as I said, I am a full initiate of the Kabbalistic tree, including the Sephiroth and the Qliphoth. So I understand a lot of the tree of life and a lot of the tree of death, the nature of positive energies in general and the nature of negative energies. And because of that, I can apply some of this wisdom that I have from my experience into the reading itself, and I can give you some of the Kabbalistic significance on where you're pulling from in your present moment, as well as your near future and your long-term future. It can be very valuable. I've done well over 2,000 of these readings. I've been doing this for other people for over 3 years now. I receive tons of valuable feedback, and I do a reading almost every single day. If this is something you want to take advantage of, definitely look into it. It's that second link below that you can book that service with me as well. All right, we'll leave that there. Now we're moving into the third link below. The third link below is where you can become a YouTube member. And as you're becoming a YouTube member, you're getting access to a multitude of different benefits. But most importantly, you get access to the Psychic Warfare Emoji Program. And what this is a sequence of emojis that I've designed myself that are based on real occult principles. And you can use them in a specific configuration. You link in the name of a target, hit enter, and it causes psychic effects to the target of your choice. This is the most simple form of using psychic warfare through the internet platform. And there are literally over 2,000 posts where people are already using it. Members are using it. There are even members using it as we speak in this moment. This is also a very healthy way to express aggression. So rather than repressing it inside of your body that potentially leads to negative symptoms, we can express it in this healthy way through psychic means. So if you want to take advantage of this, definitely consider it. You click that third link below, you join, become a YouTube member, and then you have access. All right, so with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly where I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate all of you very, very, very much, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day or night, wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.